welcome to GPS. We are here again for another show, and we are happy to have Judy L.Tyrer here, and we're going to be talking about her game, Everjane, coming up very soon. But first, we like to start with a little bit of background, and it's great to talk to a lot of different gamers to get different perspectives, and especially, people always talk about uh, video games being a male-dominated sport, and you had things like Gamersgate, things like that. So I always like to get a woman's perspective on games and growing up with gaming to see differences in their perspectives. So I mean, just I guess starting with the beginning, can you tell us about like your gaming background?
Well, in terms of being a gamer, I think I wanted to have a robot to play games with me since I was about 9 years old, because I just always loved to play games all the time, and I drove my family crazy. I always, it was like, okay, we will play one game, and that's all. And I still do that. We have to. My family has to argue with me how many iterations of this game we're going to play before we start. I'm hardcore. And then, I just recently protested this headline. I think it came from DICE about now gaming is now multi-generational. I went, excuse me, I'm playing Pong with my mother. Video gaming, it started off multi-generational. It just sort of, the media just sort of followed one element of it. So my first computer gaming experiences was the game called Empire on Plato, which was a Cyber 4000. It was the first game that you could play, 40 people could play all together at once. It was great fun. And so that kind of was the start of my career. It was in serious gaming, and Control Data's product Plato was a really good example of how a product can be ahead of its market. It was a wonderful computer-based education system. And I was hired straight out of college with my little teaching certificate to become an education specialist, and I just took to programming. I loved it, so I ended up doing a lot of coding. So when I left there, I went into become a programmer, and I moved into the Unix world. I was hired by one of the people who worked from UCLA. They were on the team that actually did invent the internet. Not the legalistic part of it, but the actual hardware part of it. So it was really cool. There was a picture of the original internet team, and I went, that was my first boss! It was cool. It was really cool. And so I worked and I got involved in that whole section, and in LA, the Unix industry was pretty small, so when everybody jumped ship from Kodak to go off to do Locust, I jumped ship and went off and did Locust too, and so we worked on Unix clusters, which was really, really fun, and I specialized in file systems, and I learned a lot about computer science. And then we got to a point where we'd shipped, clusters were out, and there was just sort of, and I'd kind of gotten in this rather awkward situation in a company, and so we had parted ways by that time, and I was flailing about going, what should I be doing, what should I be doing? And my son was 12, and he said, what should I be doing, what should I be doing? And I said, well, if I was your age, with as much as you love games, because we were a gaming family, right? As much as you love games, you should get into video games. And it was like this light bulb went off, and it went, so why aren't you getting into video games? I was 50, female and 50, going into the video game industry.
You're telling, that must be awesome to have your mother saying, hey, you need to get into video games. I mean, really, like, what world would you see yourself as a child hearing that from a parent?
Oh, I don't know. He didn't take my advice, though.
So, it's like Bizarro World.
Well, yeah, but it's a great industry. I mean, well, I love the industry, but I was a gamer. I'm a gamer parent. I mean, from Pong I had my little Nintendo systems that my nephews had, and I would go babysit and play Nintendo with them for hours and hours because I felt guilty buying my own, but eventually I bought one, stuff like that. So I got into that stuff. Now I wouldn't tell him that. Well, I would tell him that, but I would tell him to go into the industry really from a strong point of view, because the industry is not kind to its developers. But I didn't know that at the time. So I got into the industry. Basically, I was talking to my sister. I said, I don't know, I'm crazy. I don't know if I can do this because I'm old and I'm female. And she had this great line, and I want it to go viral because it's so good and everybody should hear it. She said, Judy, you are not a statistic. And I loved it. I thought that was the best advice, and I went, that's right, I'm not a statistic. I'm a human being in a human situation. And it allowed me to kind of throw out all those statistics that told me I wouldn't make it. And then I was working on my demo, and I wrote a note in the IDDA forums, technical forums, about networking, because I had a lot of networking in my background. I mean, we used to rip apart TCP/IP headers in order to redirect traffic and stuff. So I had all this networking, and I thought that's the best match for me. And I wrote a letter asking whether it was better to pull or push data and under what circumstances, and I got a response saying, send me your resume. And that was my first job at Red Storm at Ubisoft, and I worked there for 7 years. 6 years? In the 6 to 7 year range. And then I was hired by Sony Online, who wanted to take my management experience, because I'd been in computer industry for 25 years, and I had a lot of experience as management as well as development. And so I worked for Sony Online and did Magic the Gathering Tactics, and we got that out the door. And we had other games. They had card games in all of the Sony MMOs, so I had experience with some of the others. And then Sony went through a period, if you remember, they closed all of their extra offices. They just around the country, and they really solidified into major offices. We were shipped to San Diego, and my job was going to be fixing I-18N bugs in Flash, and I just didn't see that as a really positive career move from running the technology of a studio to fixing Flash bugs. So I moved to Linden Lab and had a great experience there. And it was almost like, you know, it was almost like, if you believe in serendipity or spirituality or any of that, it's almost like the universe saying, you need this experience to get where you want to go to do what you want to do.
Yeah.
Because I walked into managing the server team. And the server team, we managed 650,000 simulations. So we're talking major scale, 10,000 physical servers, 3 geographic locations, scale at a level very few people get to play with. And I spent a whole year, and I was the liaison to customer support, so I actually talked to customer support every week. So I got just this pouring of really important technical knowledge and business knowledge so that I could run off and build my own MMO, which is now what I'm doing for some strange reason, because I'm crazy.
That's the best reason, though.
That's it. I don't want to retire. When I had the other thing that happened was I started looking at my birthdays, realizing that they really weren't birthdays getting older. They were really countdown to seed money. So the other advice I give anybody who's working in a company that has any kind of 401k matching plan, put all you can into it, get it matched, don't throw that money away. When you're my age, you'll be so glad you did. Because that is where the company is coming from.
Nice.
I mean, did you experience, during your tenure with all that? I mean, obviously you had, the know-how, you had the skills, you had the education, the experience, all that coming up. But still, I mean, did you have any pushback just because you were a woman, especially earlier on in your career?
I was very fortunate to have run into a gentleman who was married and had very strong feelings about putting more women into the industry, into the computer industry. And so, no, I did not. I not only didn't get pushback, I actually landed a cushy. It was the antithesis of getting pushback, because there was a problem, and I hooked, and it was because he was in a position to do something. So I went in being willing to be a technical writer, because I just wanted to get into the computer industry. And I felt that my programming skills, because the only language I knew was Tutor, that they wouldn't want me as a programmer, but that if I could get as a technical writer, then I could learn what I needed to learn to be a programmer. And so they interviewed me with the technical writers, they interviewed me with the customer support staff, I interviewed with the QA staff, and I interviewed with the development staff. And this one development manager looked at me and said, so you would be willing to take a cut back from programming to writing just so you could get into new programming and learn a new language and get into the real computer industry? And I said, yes. And he said, okay. And he hired me because of that. And he said, I want you to know the reason I hired you was your attitude. He said, I could have hired people who are more skilled and more capable, but they would have been prima donnas, and I needed somebody willing to do grunt work. And that really kind of became the bottom line. And I'll be honest, I think a lot of my career has been successful because I've been willing to do that. I don't have I'll do grunt work. You know, my philosophy is that if you feel you're too good to clean a toilet, you need to go clean a toilet. Don't forget where we came from, you know? It keeps me grounded. So, and it's been a good thing, because when you're CEO, guess what you get to do? All the grunt work. And sometimes it feels like nothing but.
Now, I mean, growing up playing games all the time, did you have a situation where, you know, like if you're playing with people, the fact that you're really good at games, you know, was that intimidating to either your children or just other people that you were playing with?
In college, I had to dumb down my Scrabble game a lot. But my mom was a Scrabble. See, now my mother was also a gamer, so my mother and I played Scrabble all the time. She would play Scrabble with her friends. You know, she had a group of friends, and they'd get together, and one of them had a pool, so we always got to go and swim in the pool while the moms play Scrabble. It was like the perfect child life. Yeah, so I had to really, I remember playing, and you know, when you played with somebody and they played about 6 words and 12 points is the most they've gotten, it's really embarrassing to put down these 53-point words.
Yeah.
And at some point I decided my friendship was more important than proving how smart I was, so I did. I dumbed down. Just that's the only one I can remember, but I do remember having to do that. No, a lot of my friends are really smart too, and they were really good. I mean, I don't win every game of Catan. I only win well, I used to win a lot more than I do now, but then my family figured out how to play.
Well, I always figured that perhaps maybe it could be an intimidation factor because I was able to speak to a few people that had like a gaming family, and they would sometimes speak that at least if it was one person playing, you might have that the conflict where they may not understand gaming, so it's like, oh, get off this game, and they don't understand it. But on the other hand, if everyone's a gamer, then everyone's fighting for that same game, or next thing you know, your mom's playing your game, and they're beating you at your game. You're looking there like, wait a minute, I thought I was the best player in the house, and here she's owning me in this game. Everyone has.
Well, we did that. We got a new game for Christmas, and it's a wonderful game, and I'm gonna have to remember the name. I'll tell you the name of it later. You play you run power grid. That's the name of it. You run power plants. Okay, so the first game, I took everybody out. I haven't won a game since. Yeah. So yeah,
it just stole the manual, and they're like thoroughly.
Once they figured out how to play it, my natural instincts. Now I have to develop, it's a really good game because once you develop one strategy, you're gonna have to change your strategy next game.
Yeah.
So you have to constantly switch it out, which is fun. But yeah, no, I mean, we used to do, and Sunday afternoons we used to play Monopoly with my dad and my grandmother. We'd go to my father's mother's house and play Monopoly that was always fun. And my dad didn't believe in letting children win. So if you won, he was brutal too. I mean, he would do these deals that were just mean.
Wow.
And I would be just so desperate. He was trying to teach me to stop being so desperate, I think, because he could get me. I would just make horrible deals because I was desperate for that one piece, and he knew how to play that. And, I guess in retrospect, if he taught me how he was manipulating me, I could have learned a good lesson, but he just did it.
No trophies like they give out nowadays for just placing. It's you have to get the winner's trophy or nothing.
Oh no, I didn't grow up in that world. I grew up in a much more brutal world. I was told that I should become a secretary so I could meet a nice young executive and get married.
Wow.
And why was I bothering to take Latin? So yeah, I grew up in that. I'm the old feminist. I'm the ones who went to say, excuse me, but teacher, secretary, nurse, there's got to be more in this world for us. So that's why getting into the computer industry was like a godsend. I really didn't know what I was going to end up doing because I failed in college and did not find a husband.
So how do you feel when you look at games nowadays, like what has come out, and especially I would say earlier, I mean, it's a little bit better now, not too much, but when people try to market to women or girls and they say this is a girl's game, they still try to use those old archetypes and say, hey, you should be playing this cooking game or you should play this dress-up game. Not saying that there's anything necessarily wrong with that. If that's what you love, that's fine. But it seems like they still try to push you to that, and the boys, here, you go fight wars and shoot and be a cop. I mean, is that still fine because it's just a game, or do you still think that that's part of the problem.
Well, it's interesting because I'm very involved with this next generation of young feminists, and the things that they're dealing with, the unintended consequences of what we had, what we did. I mean, that's going to always be the case. The next generation's always stuck with the unintended consequences of the decisions of their parents. We had no idea that when we opened up and it became, we had a certain comfort in sexuality. I mean, remember, I grew up where abstinence was it. And, I mean, this was, Roe versus Wade was during my lifetime. So it's, now the girls are dealing with this level of rudeness that never would have occurred to us. Because when you tamp down all that sexuality pre the hippie movement, I mean, sex was not talked about. It was not discussed. It was not had. Be a good girl. Good girls don't like it. If you like it, you're a bad girl. Men have mistresses as bad girls. They have wives as good girls. You have to be a wife, not a mistress. I mean, that whole thing. I mean, I'm literally telling you, I was literally told, pretend you like it. The whole 9 yards, all that stuff in all those 40s and 50s movies, I lived it. But now guys are so rude. I mean, they would never have said these things to us. I would never have had a rape threat. I would never have been, just this attitude that the guys now have of, well, girls owe me. That's an unintended consequence. So they're fighting a whole different battle than what we had to fight. I mean, I got hit on. We had those moments. I did have to transfer out from under a boss, but it's just a different battle. So earning respect now is much harder. I think that's where the battle is. And the industry is still heavily male dominated, but I don't think it's necessarily that it's just because the industry is unwelcoming. Now, I may be tougher than a lot of women, and I'm sort of used to that sort of male locker room environment, and I'm comfortable in it because I'm a total tomboy. But we do need more diversity, that's for sure. And the games, I have no problem with the games. Someone who was it that posted recently in Indie Games about, well, how would you feel about this game? And it was like, well, if you want to build, it was a game of torture. What do you think about a game about torture? Yeah, it was a very controversial choice, and it's like, I won't play it, but I'm not going to advocate not building it, if that makes sense. I don't want to play it, but I think, it well done, it could be a good game. Badly done, it could be, a sadist's place to go hang out and practice. I don't know, but so I do believe that there's room for. I don't want to limit, and then that's part of the whole fear of women in the industry. There's fear there, right? Oh, they're going to change it, and I can't speak for other women, but I personally don't want to change it. I don't want to say, hey, don't do those games. I just want to say, hey, do these games too. Do all of the games. Let's we don't stop having pornographic movies just because we have Pride and Prejudice as a film. They're two separate films. They're completely different audiences, and they don't have to wipe each other out. It doesn't have to be either or. It can be, God knows, it has to be both. We're living in a world where people have a limited amount of discretionary income, and we're in an industry totally dependent on people's discretionary income. Right? So we have two choices. We either diminish our industry or we open our markets. I mean, that's just plain smart business. We need to open the market. The reason the women's games haven't been opening to the market is because men have been making those decisions. It's kind of like Congress having a panel on reproduction that's all men.
Yeah.
They're going to miss a really important viewpoint there.
Yeah.
So when you have guys going, well, what do women like? I mean, we all saw that Mel Gibson movie, right? Well, we like all kinds of different things, but there's certain things that more women won't like than more men won't like, and I think violence and gore falls into that category. More women will eschew that sort of. I don't want to just go out and kill people all the time. I don't want to kill pixels. I don't want to kill rats. I don't want to, why can't I do something different, like gossip?
And role play.
I want to do girl stuff. I want to gossip now. Well, role play, absolutely. I was, I was an improv actress, so I love improv. So role play is like, it's online improv. You just jump into a character and you start creating, and it's the most fun in the world. And I was lucky enough in EverQuest to get into a heavy-duty role-playing group, and we had so much fun. And it was sort of sad to see the industry throw us away and move into a different direction.
Yeah, like when I first saw your game, I was like, wow, this is like a true online role-playing game.
Mm-hmm.
Like that, the point it's not to accrue, you know, oh look, I killed like 50,000 boars. I got these swords from it. It's okay, you know, let me see what social manipulations I can do, and to me, that's what a role-playing game is about.
Yeah,
Yes.
exactly. Yeah,
It's
that's actually, yeah, that's right.
it's if I mean look at even like right now it's popular Game of Thrones. You're there's hardly any action. It's all like, how did this character feel about this betrayal? How did
Oh,
this
it's
plot?
intrigue.
Yeah, and that's what makes it so good. There's hardly any action in that show,
Mm-hmm.
and it's great. So
Well,
it's
and
the same thing. The intrigue, the interaction between characters, the buildup of relationships. That's what real good writing is about, and that's what a real good story is about.
mm-hmm. So we're hoping to, we're transitioning into talking about the game now. This is good, because so what we're hoping to do is to build those stories. I'm redefining it as, it's the quest system is its name internally, but we're going to call it stories. Your story, not your quest line, but your storyline. And that's one of the things we're trying to do, is we're trying to stimulate those stories through the quests. So unlike normally, if you have a group quest in like WoW, say, everybody has the same quest, everybody has the same goal, you all go off, you go do it as a group, you get the same reward as a group. Ours are going to be a little different because everybody has a different role to play in the storyline of the story quest. So your role to play may be prevent these people from getting away. I'm using, like, the one that we've built is the one where you elope to Gretna Green. So so the parental, if you're the parent of these people, your role is to stop them. If you're those people, your role is to beat the parent. So at the end of the storyline, not everybody's goal is going to be met. We have conflicting goals that are parts of the same storyline, which I think is going to make it much more interesting. And everybody has a role, and so you know what your role is, and you're involved in more than one story, hopefully, because people don't play 24/7. But that's where we're sort of taking that. We basically took the basic genre and just mashed it. I guess we tweaked it and said, well, okay, so instead of having raids, we're going to do balls, and the balls are in. You can dance with the AI. If you do dance with the AI, please don't bump into them, because they don't reset themselves as neatly as they could. So they can, and the turns have a little trouble sometimes. But if you dance with other players, we've gotten 2 of us dancing together, and we've turned together, and it's awesome and fun, and it's hard. And I simplified it incredibly, but it's still, you have to be where you're supposed to be when and you have to turn, and it's really kind of fun. I hope everybody else thinks so too.
Can you tell us a little bit about, I mean, for the people that are not that familiar with the virtual world or the works of Jane Austen itself, can you just tell us a little bit about the world that people will be immersing themselves in?
Okay, well, they're immersing themselves. It's during the Regency period. So the game starts in 1790 and it ends in 1830. And right now it's a 8.1. Okay, so to keep the timing working, so basically there are 3 game days per real world day. But it's offset by a minute. And the reasons it's offset by a minute is so that if you play the same time every night, you can get a different time of the day as the day moves. Traditional MMO, somebody else solved that. I just stole it, borrowed it, riffed on it. I think that's a better phrase. I just used it. But so, and during that period of time, it's a fascinating period of time in history. This is immediately after the French Revolution. So what you have is a very class-focused, centered environment in which your upper class is in a state of panic. They are so terrified of the mob that it's like the rules are followed with a rigidity you do not see at any other time in history. And especially, it's very interesting, the rules for the lower classes and the rules for the upper classes, because we do allow people to play both. It was also a period of great debauchery, which is something that I didn't know till I started doing the research. But the Prince Regent was rather, let's say that the Victorian period came as a reaction to his debauchery. It would be a good way to phrase it. And so it was just, so there's a lot of, but everything is it's all under the surface, so you never let that be known. So there's all this, people are doing all these, I'm trying to think of the right word, orgiastic parties going on, but nobody lets anybody know. It's all very prim and proper up front. One interesting thing for women, I think, is fascinating. A woman in the gentry, once you had given birth to a male heir, you were free to do whatever you wanted as long as you remained discreet. So women could go out and have their own affairs as long as they were very discreet about it, and it wasn't known publicly. But it was expected. I mean, it was just like, oh, well, she's had her male heir, she's available. It was just very weird. Things that you don't know until you get deep into the research. That's not what you get in your, PG-13 upbringing and history classes.
Definitely.
So, very lot of not PG-13 going on under, but only in the very high royalty. So below the royalty, the gentry's all trying to behave. It's just, but they did have they'd had parties, and it's mentioned everywhere where they would, musical bedroom parties, kind of things. So I don't know how we're going to handle that.
Yeah, it's like the difference between reading about the Roman Empire on a history book, like a generic history book, and then watching Spartacus, and it's like, oh, look, they're going to just do whatever the hell they want with a slave.
Right. Well, it's the same theory as it's like watching Camelot and reading the real history of the 14th century.
Oh yeah.
Chivalry did not really exist. It was just written up to make, try to govern people, but it didn't actually happen.
Yeah, it's like a PR campaign.
As far as tying in the personality traits with the gossip, I was reading over like some of the other interviews you did, and also like the Kickstarter back in the day. Can you tell us a little bit more like how those two work together?
The traits in the gossip?
Yeah.
Okay, so your personality traits are, if you play traditional MMOs, you have strength, you have dexterity, you have whatever. We have, I can do them from memory, yeah, sure I can. We have happiness, duty, no, I'm going to look up the status, happiness, duty, kindness, and reputation. I do it so much that I get them, anyway. So based on whether, so you get to choose which one of those you want to accent and which one of those you want to let go. The idea being that you can't have everything. So you can say, I'm going to be happy and screw duty. Marianne is a really good example of that in Sense and Sensibility. So these are all based on characters. I tried to base the personality traits on different characters, like Mr. Darcy is all duty. Or Mr. Knightley's even worse. But then we get Mr. Darcy to do the thing that makes him happy at the end, which is kind of why everybody loves that book. He gets away from that snotty thing and becomes real. So in the gossip system, what you can do is you can affect someone's personality trait by gossiping about them. You can either affect it positively or negatively based on the gossip that you're telling. So if somebody wants to be known as kindness and you go, oh my gosh, this person did the nicest thing, and everybody's gossiping about this nice thing she did, well, her kindness is going to go way up because, that's what she wants to be known as. On the flip side, if somebody dislikes you and they want to be your enemy, they might decide that if you want to be kind, they're going to prove what a really nasty, evil person you are, and they may tell lies about you. And as they're telling these lies and these lies are spreading, your kindness begins to kind of go down because people are lying about you and they're thinking bad things. And so you kind of have to figure out what's going on. So to prevent that, you want to find out who's telling lies. And that becomes the sleuthing part of the gossip system. So you find out that you're being gossiped about, and then you have to find out who's telling the gossip. And if you can confront the person telling the gossip, then whatever, like, if let's say your kindness points went down 2 points because of that, theirs is going to go down 4. So they get double what they tried to screw you with. Um, and it, because gossip really was, and even in Jane Austen, I mean, all of Jane Austen books, gossip is a huge part of what they did. And it's a huge part of what we do. I every now and then try to watch television I don't normally watch, just to sort of tap into what people are into. And I watched an episode of Real Housewives, and it was 100% gossip, 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 gossip. That's all they did. The whole show is about gossip. It was kind of interesting and scary at the same time. So I did want to do that. I wanted to kind of make that. And so certain events, the reason it's important that you want to raise certain statuses is that certain events will be based on. So we will have, for example, if we might have a happiness ball, and you have to have a certain level of happiness to get in, or you don't get invited. And in the storylines, we'll do things like there will be storyline. We have one like an Emma kind of storyline where your job is to help somebody find a partner. It's the matchmaking storyline. You know, and so I just lost my train of thought. I was going to tie this into something, and I've lost it if you remember it.
Oh, you're saying about how you were going to tie in the levels of if someone was to try to raise up the happiness.
So you couldn't be, so thank you. That happens sometimes. I talk too fast.
I do it too.
So you couldn't be, so you couldn't get the Emma quest unless you have a level of kindness at a certain level. You can't be status-oriented and get the Emma quest. You can only get the Emma quest if you're kindness-oriented, because that may not... I reserve the right to change that. But right now, that's the design. You know, so we'll have different quests. So you can choose what kind of quest lines you want, and what kind of... And a lot of it is, what role do you want to play? And the fact that we have reincarnation allows you to also, you know, play sort of like a family role, and you can change and be different people that way. But you can play that part of it. I really want to play Mr. Collins. I want to create a Mr. Collins character once we're live, because he's delightful. He's so obnoxious and so brutish and so inept socially, and I just think he would be really fun to play. So you know, Mr. Collins is going to be a status-oriented person, because he just fawns over everybody's status, everything, you know. And so how you get married, the process of getting married is based on what your personality traits are. There's just a whole lot, you know, everything is, it's all tied in, and it's starting to come together. It's all tied in, and we keep all this information, and we're generating our own content with it that way. So that's the part I'm real excited about. But it's all Crayolas. It's not quite what it's going to be yet.
And in this game, it's not a death by sword. It's a social death, because if you go too much down and you're not invited, and you lose your status and you're not getting invited, that's it.
Yeah,
Yep.
You're bored. Change cities. Go to a new village. You know, that's what was it Wiggum? There's two W's, and they're in different books. I think it was Wiggum that ended up having to move because everybody found out what he was a scumbag of. So anyway, so yeah, that's the whole idea, and then you can change, and we do have death, so you might choose to let your character die young. You might choose, one of the things we're working on, the terms of service and the rule book right now, and one of the things that's really important is that nobody's allowed to harm another character without that player's permission. So that's something we're working on, the stories of getting people to understand. Yes, you can pull out a gun and shoot someone, but you better make sure the player playing the character you just killed approved of being killed. Those are the things that happen, and that's where we're unique in terms of having to deal with customer issues, because that's a rigid rule. If you didn't give your character permission to die, they can't kill you off. But having played a role play where I did give permission for my character to be murdered, I can say giving permission is awesome. It was so dramatic. People were crying. It was great. You know, we had this big scene. It was all planned. So, but yeah, so we're having to deal with how to deal with those kinds of role play issues. But people will die. They have to die because you can't. If you die of old age, you want to set up the legacy so that you inherit everything that your character did before. So you come back in, you have a new name and a new character, and you're starting again, but you have all the qualities that you achieved in your last incarnation.
Oh, okay.
Well, it was a way to it's a way to deal with the fact that we will have our lifetimes will be very short. You know, I expect people to have 2, 3, 4 lifetimes in that 30-year period.
Oh,
Because that's, you know, to do 30 years doing it the way we're doing, I think it's 5 years to do the whole cycle, and then it'll restart in 1790 again and go forward.
Yeah.
and
So,
so
I mean,
far, how is the like? What kind of feedback have you gotten from like fans and people who have been interested in playing the game once it's released?
the feedback's been really. We do have people who play. They don't play as much as they did, but that's partly because the servers are a little bit iffy at times. We're getting better. There's a crash in them. In dealing when we move from server to server, and you have to delete all the stuff from the previous server you were on, and then you go back again. That's not working real well. So we have certain issues. We try to keep everything alive. But it is a game in progress, and it's in development in progress. So the people who are playing it seem to be enjoying it. They're waiting for certain things. There's not as much feedback as I'd like, I guess, because of that. That's what I'm saying. But I think that as we get more and more events going, we don't have events yet. I just put in fact, in this next release, which is sneak previewed up at the moment. You can only sneak preview it, which means I haven't built the Mac version. And it means that there's more going into this next release that's not in the sneak preview. But in that version, we have global invitations. So now we as a development team can set an event, and we set it in the database, and it will show up on every player's calendar. And I'm hoping this works. I haven't heard it didn't, so I'm assuming it did. There's a button you can push, so you have your calendar is set in game, and you can push a button, and it will tell you what time that is in your local time zone in real time.
Oh, wow.
So that you can schedule things. So we're going to schedule stuff, and that way people will know, oh, there's a scheduled event. The developers have a scheduled event. We'll go to it, and it shows up in the newspaper. All global events show up in the newspaper. So basically what we have right now is the first cut. Right now only the global events and people who have just moved to town show up in the newspaper. Eventually we'll have news stories. And the idea is that as people do things in the world, we save all the events that happen in the world. When two people meet, we save that in the database. These two characters met. It's stuck in the database. There's just all kinds of events. Everything happening in the world is being stuffed in the database. Yes, I'm terrified of scaling this. But the database scales well. We can always split it. We can distribute the database if we have to. So it'll be okay. That's what I tell myself. Optimization isn't yet, so it's hard to know. But so we save all this stuff. So we're generating newspaper articles out of it. And then if a newspaper, like if a story comes along and you want to participate in the story, you can click on that and you get a role in the story, or you get, so that stuff is what I'm working on right now. That may or may not be fulfilled because that may be more complicated. But right now I can guarantee if you click on somebody who's arrived in town, it will show up in your task list to go visit them. So
okay.
that's, so that's how we're getting, so I'm hoping. So this is my contribution to the gaming industry. If I pull it off, and it's a big if, is the game where playing the game generates the content of the game, so that the more it's played, the more content there is, and you don't need humans constantly pumping content in to keep the players happy, because that's these big MMOs are just content generation is everything. I mean, just constantly generating content, and much more content than code. So this is my fingers crossed. This is the game is going to work. Now whether this particular functionality works as robustly as I'm hoping it will and becomes perhaps a middleware kind of third-party thing that other people can use or not. We'll be using it in multiple games, but and developing it as it evolves. But that's the part I'm real excited about that right now. Because it is actually generating some content, not as much as I hope for, not at the complexity level I want yet.
And I love like the artwork and the styling of
oh,
the
thank
game.
you.
Yeah.
Renee, really thanks nice. You. It's all Renee. Renee is, that was a wonderful partnership. She's fabulous. And we did a lot of talking. I can tell you a little bit about the style I had some input on, because we're talking about, and she wanted to do cartoons. And I was like, no, we can't do cartoons. She was giving me the stuff. I said, no big eyes. I hate the, I was just trying to get away from that. And so she sat me down and says, you have to read the article about, and it's an art concept, and the name, I do hard times with names, where if you're too realistic, it makes it uncomfortable to play.
Mm-hmm.
There's a term for it, and I don't remember the term. And I said, okay, I agree with that, but let's do. So we finally came up, and at that time I was realizing, we could let the players change the wallpaper on their houses. We could let the players move the furniture around, and we came up with the idea of the dollhouse, which was not in the Kickstarter. So the dollhouse is a new feature. And we said, and naturally called it a dollhouse, and then naturally went, well, then we should have the characters be dolls. And so if you look at the character skin, it's very smooth and more plastic looking than it was in the Kickstarter, where she was going for something much more human.
Yeah.
And so it works. It solves that problem of not being too human. But the characters, I just love them. There's one that she has these really chunky cheeks, and it's like when I see that face, I know the character I want to play, which is what we really want. So, but Renee's done a beautiful job with the artwork, and she loves learning new stuff, which is great, because she had to learn to rig. She didn't know how to rig yet. And so the Kickstarter, one of the problems, I guess I shouldn't say this. Well, I'm going to tell you anyway.
No, we love this stuff. Please tell us.
I'm horrible at what I'm not supposed to say. I don't have all those filters that you're supposed to have between brain and mouth. So I had originally hired her as a contract artist to do the two characters. And she delivered them, and I didn't like the female, and I wanted to change it. And she said, I can't change it. And she said, why not? I said, why not? And she said, because I didn't rig it. I don't know how to rig. So I sent it out to a friend who rigged it for me. And I said, okay, well, we're going to live with this, and you're going to learn how to rig. How would you like to learn how to rig? She said, I would love to learn how. So I said, okay, you got a month. Go learn how to rig so that we don't have this problem again. So that's been kind of how we've been doing it, and the fact that she's willing to take on stuff that isn't her job, it's like, I know it's not your job, but I don't have anybody else to do it. And she goes, yeah, I'll do it, no problem. So she's awesome, and I love her, and she's married now. She should be getting back from her honeymoon today.
Oh wow!
So
and that's
yeah,
another example of being flexible and taking on other tasks to be able to achieve something more.
Yes. And she works for other people as well. I don't own her. You don't get to own people anymore. No, I wouldn't own her anyway. But she's not an employee. She's only a contractor. And I say only, but it saves a lot of issues. But so she another game that she just did. I'm going to plug. This is how good I am as a boss. She just came out. Gravity Ghost was her game. She did the artwork on. She did a lot of the artwork on Gravity Ghost. So so she's a freelance artist, and she just works for me 40 hours a week. Anything else, the rest of her time is her own.
And I really like the idea of like the states and being able to put everything together, like you said, being able to change the environment of your home and move things around, because even with guys who will be playing these MMOs like EverQuest, some of the most beautiful homes that I remember in EverQuest 2, when they allowed you to design your home, were some of these guys who would claim to be all hardcore, but then they would spend 12, 14 hours making sure that the rug was perfect and it matched the chandelier. So, they can talk all they want, but they love playing, putting together a dollhouse and making sure their characters' shoes match their hat. So, we love all that stuff. We talk tough, but we love designing our dollhouses.
Second Life was that way. I mean, it was fun. Now, in Second Life, if you work for them, they give you a free account and you get an allowance. So I spent all of my not work time at the office playing with my pool and my big house, and I had a Great Dane dog that liked to jump on the roof. That was very annoying. Yes, people love to do it. People love to do it. We all did it. I mean, everybody would, have their, and that was a unique experience because we met in World, and it would crack my kids up. They'd say, Mom, there are 6 of you on headsets sitting around the same table meeting in the World. This is weird. I said, yeah, but there's 6 people in Boston, and there's 2 people in Colorado in the same meeting.
Nice.
But we all met as avatars, so you got to know people as your avatar, and you were actually called by your avatar name. Nobody was called by, well, some people used their real names as avatars, and then somebody got hacked, and that was the end of that. It's really dumb to use your real name as an avatar. But yeah, so my boss was named Bagman, and he wore a navy blue suit with a brown paper bag over his head. And the CEO, Rodman, at the time, he was CEO. He was a rocket ship.
Nice.
So people had a lot of fun. So you build your avatars too. One guy had an avatar with a talking head, and the talking head would be whatever it could see. It was like there was animations in them. It was amazing, amazing stuff they did. That's a cool platform. I wish it was being. We'll see how it goes. I think they're bringing it into the 21st century. I loved working there, though. I really did. And so I'm hoping this will have as much fun as, it'll be a small niche market, but I'm hoping the people will have as much fun in it, building their homes and their gardens. We're going to let you garden, too. And everybody's going to have a pig and a pigsty in the back of the house.
Nice.
Because that's what they had. In England,
Yep.
Everybody had their own pigs. That's just, so we're really looking forward to when we can do what we call the set decoration. We're not there yet. She built the carriages, so the carriages are going into the next release. There will be several models. She did a beautiful job making modular carriages so she can swap things out and make instant variations. Another cool thing that we're working with is we're partnered with this group, this small company called Artomatics, and if you send them 3 models, they'll send you back 100 variations of those models. It's AR that creates art. It's all our AI created art. So we're hoping to do a lot of our set decoration. We're hoping to work with them on that. And maybe as they become better and we become better, we have a problem. I'm going to be honest with you. We have a really, if you know anybody who knows Unity and art and understands rigging and mesh swapping, we have a little problem in our mesh swaps. So every now and then we can't put something in that we want in because when we swap it out, it comes in 90 degrees the wrong way, and we don't know why. So that's one of those challenges that we'll find somebody who can fix it that I can hire to fix it, or we'll work around it, and we just won't have as much flexibility as we want. That makes me sad. So I'm hoping to find.
Yeah.
So I'm looking. If you ever run into anybody who's like a Unity art expert and who can do everything in Unity, I may try and just get them for 1 month to look at it. We'll see. But that's like one of those, oh, it's a huge problem. It's a technical problem. I can't solve it. I can work with what I've got. We'll push it off to later. And I think that's the trick of getting any indie done. You have to be willing to push stuff away.
So right now, the final version, if everything goes the way you like, would be out sometime in 2016.
It will be out regardless, January 2016, because we have a contractual obligation with our Kickstarter backers to deliver on January in 2016.
Okay.
Now, will it be the game we want? Can't promise that, but it will be out. Now, what we've done, I am putting 6 months. I've dedicated. The game that you're going to get, the total game, every feature that will be in the game by the end of June, because we're not putting any new features in after that. So I'm giving us 6 months to polish, optimize, and bring everything up to the next level. So we used a method of development that I learned in an art class when I was like 13, but it just made sense. I was in an oil painting class, and they said, don't get hung up on details. It says first you want to do a wash, so you have the general color scheme. That's all you want, just so you have a wash. You don't even know what it is. Then you start to begin to build the shapes with the wash. And basically the idea of it was that you built the painting as a whole, and that a lot of the problems he was saying, a lot of the artists, they will get so focused on this thing and they'll build it up so beautifully, and now it doesn't fit the whole anymore. Right. And so we're doing that method of developing this. So we're developing the whole game at a just above proof of concept level. Not even demo level yet. It's proof of concept plus a little bit more polish. And the underlying technical infrastructure, what we did all last year, was bring the underlying technical infrastructure up to, I don't want to say production level, beta level. The technical underlying code is probably beta level. It needs more testing. Some of it's auto-tested and some of it's probably production level. the main game loop is production level. It's been running forever without fail. So, but the other stuff is still, it needs work. I'm constantly refactoring. I'm constantly going, why do I have 3 methods that do exactly the same thing, and I'm calling them from 3 different paths? You know, because you build it and you start. So we're integrating all of that now. So the real issue to me is, from this base level, how good is it gonna get? And we've chosen certain features that we're going to put more polish into. So certain features are going to get up to the 100% level. I mean, they're going to be as good as we can get them. But we can't do that to everything in the game. It's too big. It's got too much stuff in it. So that's really where that last 6 months is going to be spent, prioritizing what has to be polished and perfect, and what it's really going to be what bugs we can live with. Creativity is knowing which mistakes to keep.
Yeah.
Awesome. So right now, if fans want to go check it out, they can go over to ObsoleteGamer.com and they can check out the 5-point run and also the 6-point 1.6.
R16 is the one that's in sneak preview right now.
Okay.
And yes, they can check it out. It's $25 to join the game during development, and that'll run through until we launch. And then, and I'm not sure how we're going to do beta. We may charge for beta. I'd like to not charge for beta, but then we have people paying $25. It seems unfair, you know. So I like to be fair to my customers. I'm not going to make this. I don't have the right things for CEO, you know. I don't have that cutthroat thing yet. I'm working on it. I'm working on it, you know. Cutthroat and I are not. That's like a stretch.
All
I'm
right.
that really nice person who had to add the "don't cross me" to her personality in order to survive.
Oh, I understand that. All right. For our last question, what we always try to ask our guests is, especially with all the games that you played back in the day, if you had to choose like a specific game, like a retro game that you played in the past, and you can only pick one as your favorite, what would you pick as your favorite classic game and why?
Mario Kart, because it is the most fun to play with your children. We played so much Mario Kart when it first came out, not with the later ones. Not with we got the Mario Kart for this thing, the nunchuck one, yeah, for the Wii.
Oh.
But the previous Mario Kart, my kids, you could always get them to play it. They always wanted to play it. Their friends could play it. You could pick it up. You could pick up controllers. Parents who'd never played a video game in their lives could pick up a controller, learn it pretty quickly. And the thing about that game that made it so much fun was when you play with your children love nothing more than to screw their parents in a game. You know, that's like the coolest thing. And they got very good. They would catch me on those jumps and shrink me, and they got really good at it. So they got really, you know, it created motivation, and the number of hours we spent laughing hysterically playing that game as a family. That's why. I loved those hours. Just time with your kids when you're just having fun. I loved my children, but I wish I hadn't had to be their parent. I didn't like the parenting part. You know what I mean? The part that has to create responsible adults. I loved the hanging out, having fun part the most. So I tried to generate as much of that stuff in our lives as I could. And if my kids grew up in Disneyland. We lived 10 minutes away. I mean, they had an idyllic childhood. They will tell you they didn't, but they were wrong. They didn't have perfect parents. That's their only real complaint. But who doesn't have that complaint? Anyway,
to me that it sounds pretty awesome.
Yeah. It was pretty fun. We did as much as we could to just have fun as a family. A lot of fun. We laughed a lot with them growing up, which is good because we cried a lot too. Yeah, because I'm working in the field and raising kids and the whole 9 yards, but it was a good thing, you know. And I was also, once I got into the video game industry, I then became the cool parent. So that was kind of fun, you know. I got to be cool.
That is cool.
But yeah, so from a family point of view, that was my favorite. I also loved Yoshi's Story. But see, I could start off on all the games I've loved, but if I had to pick one, that would be the one.
That's a great game.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was so much fun. and shooting people. I love to shoot the turtles at them, and they go flying in the air. I mean, so you're constantly trying to avoid getting hit and hitting other people, and you're just having fun and cry. And we always big exaggerators in our family. Oh, I'm in the pit. You put me in that pit. Made a big deal out of it.
Awesome. Well, the game is called Everjane, and you guys can check it out on everjane.com. And I mean, I really think that we're always looking at different types of games because the great thing about talking to a lot of gamers is you hear people say, "Hey, I'm looking for something different. I'm looking for something new, something innovative," and this is definitely one of those games that hits all those marks. So, I'm really looking forward to seeing it once it's all done. And I just want to thank you, Judy, for coming on and talking.
Well, thank you. I appreciate the time.
Of course, of course.
Sure.
So, of course, once again, thank you guys for watching our show, GPS. We'll be back with another show very soon. But until then, remember our motto, never stop gaming. We'll be back
Never.
very soon. Never ever.